We now come to the statement. Secretary of State, Lisa Nandy.
With your permission, Mr Speaker, I will now make a statement on our new National Youth Strategy. The challenges facing young people today are profound. They lived through a pandemic where they were denied the chance to test boundaries and gain confidence. They're at the sharp end of a revolution in social media. The pressures on young girls are significant. The effects of antisocial behaviour and violence are stark. And while talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. Despite this generation is as ambitious for themselves, their families and their communities as any other before, and they deserve a government with a plan to match. When I became Secretary of State, I was shocked to find that there was no single strategy in place for young people. I am absolutely determined to put this right. This is personal for me. One of my first jobs was at the youth homeless charity Centrepoint. And I learned everything that I know about politics from those brilliant young people. They understood the challenges that they faced better than any government could. And that is why today we are kicking off one of the biggest national conversations the government has ever held with young people, led by and for young people. As we embark on our ambitious plan to devolve more power to local leaders and communities, we are determined to champion that change, not just at national level, but in every part of government. We will take this conversation to our towns, villages and cities in every region, on their terms, not ours, to allow young people to challenge us every step of the way. They will be in the driving seat. We will make sure that young people are empowered at local, regional and national level so that funding flows to the things that matter to them. In the coming months, these conversations will feed into a report, Today's Youth, Tomorrow's Nation, detailing young people's priorities to inform our new approach. And next year, we will present to this House a co-produced national youth strategy that is fit for the decade ahead and that ensures every young person can live the richer, larger life they deserve. We disagree on many things in this House, but I believe that every single one of us shares a common desire to see this generation thrive. They deserve politicians who respect what they have to contribute, and that is what this government is going to do, and that begins today. In line with this new approach, I have to tell the House that we are going to wind down the National Citizen Service Programme from the end of the financial year and the National Citizen Service Trust when parliamentary time allows. Since its launch in 2011, the NCS has provided over 1 million young people with opportunities. The NCS met the needs of the moment and put active citizenship rightly at the heart of the government's programme for young people. It's played a hugely important role in supporting young people to build their confidence and bridge social divides. And I would like to thank each and every staff member, past and present, the NCS board, previous and current CEOs and chairs, and I would also like to thank every single young person who has contributed to the success of NCS. But in 2011, when the National Citizen Service was established, Facebook and X had only 700 million users. Now they have over 3 billion. And TikTok had not even been dreamt of. In 2011, an estimated 1 in 8 10 to 15-year-olds had a probable mental health problem. Now that's 1 in 5. The world has changed, Mr Speaker, and we need a youth strategy that reflects that. This is not a decision that we take lightly. I've spoken to the Chair and Chief Executive, and I am so grateful to them for their commitment to work closely together to protect young people and staff, to share learnings and expertise, and to ensure that there is an orderly transition from the end of the NCS programme to what comes next. And I'm delighted to announce that the current NCS Chair, Haris Bakari, will be an advisor on the National Youth Strategy. His experience will be invaluable as we step into a new way of working together with the country's young people. As part of this, I would also like to thank the NCS Youth Advisory Board. I hope that they will play a major role in our strategy. They are committed, as we are, to building a country of connected, confident and caring young citizens. And we will be working with the whole youth sector to transform our work so it better supports youth workers. Local authorities' youth funding fell by 73% under the previous government, and we know that this presents a significant challenge. Despite the disastrous economic situation we inherited, I am determined we will rise to this moment. For so many young people, it is councils and combined authorities who hold the key to unlocking their potential. To facilitate them, I will be launching a local youth transformation pilot in the next financial year to support local authorities to build back lost capability and provide tools, guidance and funding to improve their youth officer and empower young people in every community. I've also decided to increase the total funding for other DCMS youth programmes to ensure young people can continue to access opportunities no matter where they are from. We recognise the urgent need for young people to have welcoming places that they have a stake in. That is why in the next financial year, my department will also allocate over £85 million of capital funding to places where it's most needed. This includes launching the Better Youth Spaces Fund with at least £26 million for youth clubs to buy new equipment and do renovations. We will also complete the Youth Investment Fund projects that are already underway. And true to our commitment to putting young people back in charge of their own destinies, we will ensure they guide our decisions when we choose the spaces to support. We know that buildings are worth nothing without the army of trusted adults dedicated to young people to thrive. So as we develop the youth strategy, I will continue to ensure we are recruiting and training the youth workers who are a lifeline for young people. From the initial youth guarantee areas, which will help young people into employment and training, to the first Young Futures hubs and local prevention partnerships, this government is determined to break down barriers to opportunity. We are also expanding the Creative Careers programme to widen access to creative employers across the country, and we've committed to continue investment into multi-sport facilities. In addition to this funding, I'm also announcing that Youth Financial Inclusion, Social Investment and the Community Wealth Fund will each receive a significant portion of the next £350 million of dormant assets funding. Of this, I'm pleased to tell the House that £100 million will be dedicated to youth outcomes between 2024 and 2028, and there will be more detail to come when we publish our dormant assets strategy. Mr. Speaker, throughout history, the programmes that have made the greatest difference were the ones that met the challenges of the moment and were built to last. Like the 1989 Children Act, delivered by a Conservative government, which enshrined in law that the best interests of the child take priority above all else. And the last Labour government's Every Child Matters programme, which put children's views and needs at the heart of a government that changed lives everywhere. I look forward to working constructively with members across the political divide to get this right. And together we will grip these challenges to give young people chances and choices, to put them at the heart of government and unlock the potential of a generation. I commend this statement to the House.
Shall the Secretary of State?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Secretary of State for giving me advance sight of the statement. And I'd like to start by saying that we on this side of the House really do welcome any focus that government is putting on young people. I know from my time in the department that actually spending time in the youth sector was amongst some of the most inspiring moments as my time as Minister. And for in government, we had a proud record of listening to young people and putting their views at the heart of our agenda, and our record shows that. Indeed, I always ensured that young people were around the table when we were making decisions that were going to affect them, and would often comment that how could a middle-aged, grey-haired man know exactly what young people wanted. And it's because we listened to them that we allocated £500 million of funding over the next 3 years to the National Youth Guarantee, making sure that every young person aged 11 to 18 in England had access to regular clubs and activities, something to do after school, experiences away from home, and opportunities to volunteer, because that is what young people told us they wanted. And as part of the National Youth Guarantee, we allocated £300 million to youth facilities, improving and developing 300 youth facilities. We welcome the Government's commitment to the Youth Investment Fund projects that are currently underway, but will the Secretary of State confirm the fate of projects not currently underway? In Government, we also delivered £1.3 billion of sports programmes developing and improving sports pitches across the country, and can she confirm that these will still be invested in, as they are a really important resource for young people? But the importance we placed on young people, of course, went much further. Whether it was through housing, the national living wage, education or apprenticeships, we listened to the views of young people at the very top of government, and that is why we welcome some of the measures included in today's statement. We support the focus the government will place on youth workers through the local youth transformation pilot. A relationship with the youth workers and young people is amongst some of the most important, particularly for those who have challenging backgrounds. One part, however, we cannot support is the scrapping of NCS. NCS has grown since 2011 when it first supported 158 participants, today having over 750,000 young people take part in its programme over the last 13 years. I had the pleasure of visiting many of them. What struck me most was seeing the mix of different backgrounds coming together. It was a great scheme that had cross-party support. If the government intends to listen to young people, can the Secretary of State explain why it is scrapping a scheme that had 93% participation satisfaction? She says we don't need citizenship because of social media. I would argue we probably do. The cancellation of NCS also means that a hole will develop in youth services being delivered in 2025. So can she confirm what action will be taking immediately to prevent this hole from developing, and how she intends to spend the 50 million of saving made in today's announcement, or is that a loss to the sector? The ending of NCS, however, is not the only scheme being scrapped. I do not need to remind the House of the importance of cadets to both their community and to young people, especially following remembrance services yesterday and over the weekend. It's a great shame that the government has cut grant funding for cadets, and I hope that she will reconsider this. On the issue of dormant assets, this is money that we announced when in government, but I would like to ask how quickly that funding will be in the hands of those that need it. Giving young people the best start in life is something that I, and I know many here, care passionately about. And I can assure her that we will work constructively with her where we see that there are opportunities to improve services. But we will also challenge when we think she has made the wrong decision. And I'm afraid to say the cancellation of the National Citizen Service Scheme, I think, is a wrong choice.
Can I thank him very much for his constructive challenge, and I welcome him to his place, and I look forward to much more of this over the coming months and years. Just to address the specific questions that he asked me on grassroots sport funding and the facilities that we make available around the country, he will have seen that over the summer I made an announcement that the government would invest significantly in that, and we set out further details following the Euros, where an entire generation was inspired, not just by the men's team but also by the incredible success of the Lionesses and many other sports besides. We know how important this is, and so we've made a commitment to ensure that that funding matches the demand that is being placed on us by young people in particular. In relation to youth workers, I couldn't agree with him more that is incredibly important. And look, I don't intend to get into an arms race about who cares more about it. I think the truth is that where the last government left us a good inheritance, we will recognise and acknowledge that, support that, and make sure that it continues. I think the challenges facing young people, as he will rightly say too, are far too important for us to play party politics with this. And what I hope that young people will hear from this exchange is that they have a group of parliamentarians who are absolutely determined to work together to get this right, and to challenge one another when we think that we're not. In relation to the £50 million that he referenced, that is the cost of NCS, obviously we're working with the NCS Trust at the moment to make sure that we manage the closure in an orderly fashion and that all associated costs with that are met. We are going through a business planning process at the moment, and as a department, but he will have heard what I said in this House previously and what I'll continue to say to colleagues today. We recognise the funding challenges that affect the entire youth sector, and the series of announcements that I've made today, including the dormant assets funding, are intended to ensure that we really do start to put rocket boosters behind young people. Finally, he asked me about other youth organisations and particularly about uniformed youth. We do intend to increase funding to some of those organisations, particularly with a view to those who received funding previously through the National Citizen Service, to ensure that there's no gap left for them in being able to honour the commitments that they're making to young people. And just on this general question of why NCS, I do want to impress on him that we were strong supporters of the Cameron government setting up a dedicated programme for young people. I have to say to him, I was also a very strong supporter of V that preceded it, but the incoming government decided that they wanted to move with the times and they wanted to change that programme. What we have learned from that episode is that an orderly transition is really important. What happened with V was that the funding was cut, but the programme continued. And in the end, V closed in 2018 with over £500,000 worth of debts. We're determined not to allow that to be the case. It's why we're working very closely with the NCS Trust and others to make sure that we do this properly. But I have a responsibility to millions of young people around this country, and I think it's only right to say that the system was far too fragmented, not aligned with their priorities, and so I make no apology for putting them back at the centre of government where they belong.
Natasha.
Speaker, I might welcome this government's commitment to bringing youth services together, and as the chair on the Youth Affairs APBG, we look forward to playing our part in this. But the 73% reduction in youth services at a local level has meant that local groups have had to step up where local government has stepped back, such as Croydon's Youth Consortium in my constituency. Can she ensure that the best practice that these groups have brought in through working together and collaborative, not competing against each other for certain parts of funding, will be something that this government leverages rather than works against?
Can I thank her and welcome her commitment to young people, which was known about before she was elected to this place. I'm grateful to her for that question. I very deliberately have put an emphasis on what happens at local and regional level. As this government seeks to embark on the biggest devolution of power out of Westminster and Whitehall in a generation, we have to make sure that young people are empowered to play their full part, not just with national government, but with local and regional government as well. It's why we have announced funding for the Local Youth Transformation Fund to help local authorities to be able to learn from the best practice in this area. I'm also very committed, as is the Minister, to making sure that we are in towns, villages and cities across the UK, listening to the experience of young people who face very different challenges in their lives depending where they're from, but have also found some incredibly innovative solutions. And I look forward to working with her and colleagues to make good on that commitment.
Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I begin by welcoming today's announcement? The National Youth Strategy can finally bring the joined-up thinking that is needed to deliver the outcomes our young people deserve. On the point of putting rocket boosters behind young people, those kind of high-octane opportunities were not available at the youth clubs that I attended, but it sounds like an innovative form of youth work. I've seen the real results that can be achieved by youth work when an effective approach is taken. One success story is that of Cheltenham Festivals, which supports tens of thousands of young people in the arts and culture every year. And I know that the Secretary of State herself learned more when Cheltenham Festivals recently visited Downing Street, and she got to meet Sue Potato, one of her heroes. But what role is there for organisations like Cheltenham Festivals as part of the strategy? And would the Secretary of State agree with me that to deliver long-term, joined-up strategic thinking, now is the time for a Cabinet Minister for Children and Young People, as called for by the Liberal Democrats? And will whatever follows NCS continue to report into her department or another, perhaps MHCLG if local councils are to have a broader role? Now, we know that the scale of mental health crisis among young people in this country is something that gives us pause for thought every day. So will she take this opportunity to commit that this government will deliver a dedicated mental health professional in every primary and secondary school? The physical health of our children and young people is also in urgent need of support as we seek to fight childhood obesity. So can I please ask the Secretary of State, will her announcement today on dormant assets funding bring any benefits in this area of sports and physical activity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can I thank you very much? And it was indeed a pleasure to meet Sue Potato at the recent reception that we hosted at Downing Street. I know Mr. Speaker got the reference. I'm not sure anybody else did, but he is a legend. Can I also very much welcome his emphasis on the Cheltenham Festival and on arts and culture. We think that every child and young person in this country has the right to a richer, larger life, and he'll have seen that one of the first things that the Education Secretary and I announced was that a review of the curriculum to put arts, creativity, sport and music back at its heart. For too many young people, the experience of the last decade and a half has been of arts and culture and sport disappearing not just from their classrooms but from their communities as well, and we're determined to set this right. He asked me a specific question about a Cabinet Minister for Children and Young People. I'm very pleased to tell him that we have one of those. He's known as the Prime Minister, and my learning from this area, certainly having worked previously for the Children's Society and Centrepoint when the last Labour government was in office, was that although it was a great innovation to have a department for children's schools and families, in the end the only reason that the Every Child Matters programme was able to succeed is because there was a strong direction from the Prime Minister that every single Cabinet Minister had to play their part. And I hope that he can see that through the work that we're announcing today that we're absolutely determined to do that.
Clive.
Mr. Speaker, I declare my interest. For nearly 20 years I've been the chair of Samuel Montague Youth Club, chair of trustees in Samuel Montague Youth Club in my constituency, and I've been a senior play leader on a venture playground and a youth worker. So I can say to my honourable friend that this funding that she's announced today will be very welcomed by the youth work sector, particularly £85 million of overdue capital and 26 million for youth clubs. But can I just make one appeal to her, because I've been down this road many times before with government funding, and the burden of bureaucracy in applying for that money can sometimes just exclude small organisations that just don't have that sort of capacity. So can we make it simplified for people to apply for this money?
Can I thank you for that, and I look forward to visiting an adventure playground with him sometime soon. I couldn't agree with him more. He's absolutely right to flag that with me. We are keen that we make the interface between young people and youth organisations with government as painless as possible, particularly to ensure that we support those very local grassroots organisations that are achieving absolute magic with young people. We're working with devolved administrations, with the LGA, mayors, councils and others to make sure that we get this right. But I'd be very pleased to discuss this with him at a time that's mutually convenient to make sure that we do.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Caroline Dinenage.
Much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for her statement. She's right to focus on this. There's lots of positives here. If I've got any concerns, I suppose they are around the speed of the closure of the National Citizen Service and without knowing what will replace it. And that could lead to gaps in provision, but also some of the skilled and really dedicated youth workers that we rely upon leaving the workforce. She spoke about an orderly transition, and she's absolutely right. So I wondered if you could just answer me a couple of questions. What are the estimated costs of winding down the NCS? Would it actually be possible for it to continue but not publicly funded if it was to be able to get access to private finance? And how long does she estimate it will take before money for either existing or new youth projects becomes available, and when she thinks they could potentially be up and running?
Thank you very much for her question. Our intention is to close NCS, but going through all of the necessary steps, including engagement with His Majesty the King as required and Parliament. She will know that it will take some time to pass the necessary legislation through Parliament, but our intention is to honour the existing funding round until March 2025. She asked about the cost of winding down NCS. We've done some provisional work on this, but we are working closely with the NCS Board and Trust to make sure that we understand fully the implications of those costs and that we do this in the most cost-effective way and with value for money. She also asked about whether it would be possible to continue with NCS but without government funding. We are very marked by the experience of the last government and the closure of V. Without a forward forward-looking business plan, a viable business plan, we are very concerned that what we would end up doing was repeating the mistakes that were made under the last government, where, as I said to the honourable gentleman, V eventually closed with significant amounts of debt. We've looked at every different scenario. You can appreciate this is not a decision that we took lightly, but we have come to the conclusion that it is the right thing for young people and it's the right thing by NCS to be clear that we're closing NCS. This will be the last round of funding and we will legislate after having gone through the necessary processes.
Thank you, Speaker, and can I welcome the Secretary of State and this important statement. I think we all agree in this chamber that supporting the next generation of people in my town of Harlow, but across the country, is really important. Can I just make a plea to her? I think young people's voices are really important to hear in this process, but can I ask what steps she's going to take to make sure that those young people who often are forgotten, often left behind, I say from personal experience, I would say, you know, young carers, having worked for a charity to support young carers, and making sure that their voices are heard as well.
Can I thank him very much for that, and also pay tribute to the work that he's doing, standing up for a group of young people who mean a great deal to me too, having worked at the Children's Society, and who have often lacked a voice. It's fantastic to see him sitting in his place and know that they have a strong voice in him. We are working with a full range of youth organisations, drawing on the relationships that we have across the department to make sure that we reach the right young people. We're also, we have a youth advisory group that we're in the process of establishing, who are helping to make sure that we do reach the widest range of young people in every part of the country. And I will make a commitment to him that we will specifically include young carers in that group.
Jess Brown-Fuller.
Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm pleased that the Secretary of State's statement talked of widening the Creative Careers programme. As the chair of the APPG Performing Arts and Education and a proud graduate of Chichester University with a creative degree, living proof that a creative degree can take you many places, including Parliament. I'm sure the Culture Secretary agrees with me that the narrow nature of the English Baccalaureate is reducing the take-up of those creative qualifications for our young people. How soon can we expect reform in that area?
The Education Secretary has laid out the terms of the curriculum review, and she's wasted no time in appointing the chair of that review, and that work is underway. What I would say to her is that, as well as making sure that all young people have access to a broad curriculum, my department is working with many of the organisations that other members have described, the Royal Shakespeare Company and others, seeing the great work that is already happening in communities and schools, and considering how best we can make sure that all schools and all children can get access to those incredible opportunities. We know that for children and young people have been waiting for too long to be able to access these opportunities. So we're looking at the broadest range of ways that we can do that as quickly as possible. And my promise to her is that we won't waste a minute.
MacDonald.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank my right honourable friend for this magnificent statement. I think this is so timely and overdue. I think every one of us in this chamber will know from their own constituencies just how important youth service is and how it's been stretched over many, many years. There are so many tremendous suppliers and players in this arena, but the local authorities play a huge role in this. So could she say a little bit more about how she expects local authorities in terms of any additional statutory responsibilities, but critically the funding that would go through it to deliver these absolutely essential services, not just for the young people, but for our wider communities?
Well, can I thank him very much for this? And I know he has a great deal of expertise in this area, having supported young people in his own constituency for a long time. What I would say to him is that we are acutely aware of the challenges facing local authorities. And as a former councillor myself and formerly of the youth sector, it has been an enormous frustration to see more and more responsibilities on local authorities without the support and funding to match. That's one of the reasons why we've made this announcement about the Local Youth Transformation Fund today. We think that many local authorities need help, not just with funding, but also with making sure that young people are at the centre of their youth offer. And, you know, to go back to the challenge that my honourable friend laid down, to make sure that we're hearing the fullest range of voices from young people in those forums. Some local authorities are doing a fantastic job of this. I can say to him too that they have been extremely receptive to doing more, and so we're determined to learn from the best and make sure that every local authority in the country is putting young people at the heart of what they do.
Richard.
The Minister said that some funding would be protected for uniformed youth organisations. Could she spell out which organisations would not be receiving funding, given that the government have announced cuts to the cadet forces? And on the advisory board, can I appeal to her to put somebody from either the Sea Cadets, the Army Cadets or the Air Training Corps on that advisory board and reassure the House there is no institutional or departmental bias against young people wearing a uniform?
Can I say to him, heard him loud and clear, and I absolutely wholeheartedly give him that commitment. This is personal for me. My own town in Wigan has an enormous number of young people who join the cadets and other uniformed groups every year. We are tremendously proud of them, and it was a privilege to be at the cenotaph with His Majesty the King this Sunday and to meet some of the cadets from Dulwich who did such a fantastic job of welcoming the royal family and making that day a success. In terms of the existing funding, it is our intention that we honour the commitments of all existing funding, but we are planning to increase some of those funding streams, particularly in order to ensure that there is no detrimental impact on young people from the decision to close the National Citizen Service. That includes increasing funding to some uniformed groups, and I'll be in a position to set out the specifics of that to the House once my department has gone through business planning. I will also take his suggestion about putting a member of those uniformed groups on the advisory board. I'm sure we can manage to make that work. I'm looking over at officials who are nodding agreeably, and I will take that suggestion away and thank him for it.
Lauren Edwards.
Lauren Sullivan. Sorry, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you very much. The Secretary of State rightly pointed out the amazing work that trusted adults and youth workers do. Today, the average youth contract is about 9 months, as well as what are we going to be doing to address this in the National Youth Strategy, as well as supporting youth workers with access to qualifications to help them thrive and support our young people.
She points to a very, very relevant problem, and I think in the 20 years since I was in the youth sector, I don't think that problem has got any less acute. What it forces organisations to do is to constantly reinvent the wheel or to stop doing work that is incredibly valuable. And as the Honourable Gentleman pointed out earlier, the relationship between a youth worker and a young person is something that is incredibly valuable and important to protect. It's something that I and my honourable friend are very well aware of. I would be amazed if this didn't come up through the call for evidence to young people. This is a consultation that is being designed by them, for them, and I would be amazed if it didn't form part of the recommendations that we take forward into the National Youth Strategy. But in the unlikely event that it doesn't, I've heard her loud and clear, and we will absolutely make sure that we deal with that concern.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the statement from the Secretary of State and fully support her aims to provide fit-for-purpose and effective support to the young people in our country. One key component of this is the provision of sports and leisure facilities for young people. In September 2023, the Dewsbury Sports Centre and swimming pool were closed due to limited RAC. Last week, I attended a full council meeting in which the Labour Cabinet decided to permanently close the Dewsbury Sports Centre, citing repair costs of £9 to £10 million and a lack of £1.13 million in running costs. The impact of the closure on my constituents, including thousands of young people, is catastrophic. Will the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss how the government can help with the reopening of Dewsbury Sports Centre as soon as possible?
Well, I'd say to the Honourable Gentleman and welcome him to his place. I don't think I've had the opportunity to congratulate him since he was elected, that this government is very committed to making sure that we provide the sports and leisure facilities that young people across the country are clamouring for. I've seen for myself in every part of the country how much it improves young people's confidence, their educational outcomes, and also just provides them with the opportunity to live those richer, larger lives. I was very struck at the Olympics and Paralympics this summer, just how many of of those your athletes started out in the sort of leisure facilities that he provides. But can I just say to him that I think we do young people a disservice if we're not honest with them about the problems that we have and honest with them about the causes. And he knows as well as I do that there are councils around the country are not clamouring to close down their leisure facilities. Councils around the country have had the worst funding settlements from government in living memory, and they are dealing with the human cost of that in their communities every day. They're on the front line of dealing with that. I absolutely congratulate those councillors who are prepared to go out and be honest with people about the challenges that they face and seek innovative solutions. And I will give him a commitment that I will work with his council to help achieve our shared ambition of making sure that young people in Dewsbury get the opportunities that they deserve.
Oliver Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State for her statement? She, like me, is a great champion for young people, so I'm glad to hear her comments and commitments regarding the new National Youth Strategy today. This funding will be a lifeline to youth workers, youth organisations like Burnley Boys and Girls Club, Participation Works and others operating in Burnley, Padiham and Briarfield. As she says, local authority funding fell by over 70% over the last 14 years, and because of that there is just less space for young people to operate and to do what they want to do. And I note her commitment to £85 million of extra capital funding. So will she ensure that schemes in Burnley, Padiham and Briarfield are fully considered, and will she meet with me and partners in Burnley to talk about potential for an already part-funded youth zone? Thank you.
Well, can I just pay tribute to the Burnley Boys and Girls Club? We liked it so much in Wigan that we went out and got one of our own. And it's become On-Side Youth Zone, which does fantastic work with the community. I think that's a really good example of a public-private partnership where the council and the business community are jointly invested in the future of young people. Our youth zone stands in the centre of Wigan as a shining testament to how much young people matter to them. I know that's his ambition for young people in Burnley, and I'd be more than happy to work with him to make that a reality.
Right Honourable Damien Hines.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And she is right, the world has changed. And with the enormous prevalence now of electronica and social media, there is a bigger premium than ever on getting more young people out, playing sport, doing music, joining uniform groups, getting involved in all sorts of purposeful activity, even perhaps public speaking and debating. We need to make sure we make full use of the assets and facilities we have, and successive governments have tried to get schools to open up more, and with some progress we've had renewed progress with the holiday activities and food programme and wraparound care, but what more can be done to make sure that those great facilities that do exist right throughout the country are fully utilised?
Can I thank him for that? It's a long time since he and I were on the Education Select Committee together, and a lot has changed in that time as well. But can I say to him that we are very open to the suggestion of working more closely with schools to make sure that those tremendous facilities that do exist are open to more young people. I would also say to him, though, that we don't think that that is all of the answer, that there are young people who don't feel comfortable or confident in schools, and part of the thrust of the work that and the funding that I've announced today is to ensure that young people have spaces that belong to them, where they feel that they have a stake and some sense of ownership. Because for so many young people, that is then the key to being able to access services on their terms, not ours, that actually genuinely help to transform their lives. But I'm very, very open to the suggestion that we could do more by working with schools, and particularly to say to him too that, you know, I don't want the honourable gentleman opposite to misunderstand what we're saying about citizenship. I think active citizenship is incredibly important for young people. In fact, there is no future to this country unless they have the opportunity to contribute to the rebuilding of Britain. That's the reason that we've given the name to the State of the Nation report that we have, and it's one of the reasons why I do genuinely feel, listening to honourable members opposite, that there is the opportunity for us to work together in order to deliver on the promise to this generation.
Sian Berry.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank the Minister in a very sincere and heartfelt way for the focus of this statement today. I've helped work with the youth work sector to highlight the severe losses in professional youth worker jobs that have occurred under austerity, and really serious revenue funding is needed to fill the chasm. So, can the Minister give an estimate of the number of permanent new youth worker posts that revenue funding will create under these plans?
I'm afraid I have to write to her on that point, but can I just absolutely echo what she said? I said in the statement today that buildings are of no use without the army of adults who work with children and young people, and those relationships, that they're hard fought for, and that trust is hard won, and it's something that we're absolutely determined to protect. Many years ago when I worked for the Children's Society, we did the biggest ever consultation that we'd run with children and young people. The thing that came through from every single submission was the importance of a good, strong relationships to those young people and a trusted adult in their lives. I was horrified when I saw DCMS research, which showed that so many young people in this country don't have a single adult that they would trust in their lives to go and talk to about their problems, and we're determined that that's going to change. But I will write to her on that specific point.
Sir Christopher Chope.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I first of all thank the Right Honourable Lady for her generous comments about the Thatcher Government's 1989 Children Act. Can I also thank her for her statement that she's going to give £100 million dedicated to youth outcomes over the next 4 years? But will she therefore share my concern, I'm sure that as Mayor of so many young people, that we now know that over £100 million has been wasted on the ludicrous bat tunnel on the HS2. Does that not show how important it is that this House takes control of spending priorities and doesn't allow that sort of waste to be happening again in the future?
I'm not sure whether that will form the centrepiece of what young people tell us as we go out to consultation, but can I just reassure him that our government does take value for money very seriously, and whilst I wouldn't for a moment suggest that there wasn't huge value to the National Citizenship Service programme, one of the reasons that we've taken this difficult decision today is because far too much of youth focus and youth spending across government is too fragmented and not lined up behind the challenges that this generation has told us loud and clear that they face themselves, and we're determined that that's going to change.
Shaukat Adam.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I too would like to extend my thanks for the statement and the promise of investment in this vital area. One of the greatest things about NCS, according to my children who have done it, was the ability to spend time outdoors. And I'm sure the Minister would agree with me that outdoor play areas are vital, not just for physical well-being, but also the mental well-being. Leicester South has some great outdoor play areas, adventure playgrounds, including Highfields Adventure Playground and St Andrews. Unfortunately, both are under threat of shutting down because of lack of funding. Would the Minister agree with me that outdoor adventure playground areas are vital for the well-being of our children? What investments are to be made specifically for adventure playgrounds future, and discuss with her colleagues to ensure any new housing projects make provisions for outdoor play areas? Thank you.
Can I thank him for that? Many years ago, the government had a national play strategy, which my honourable friend will probably remember. But since then, I think there has been a lack of focus on the opportunities for children's play. I will take away the point that he makes about housing and discuss it with my honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government. The department, my department, has a specific stream of funding for adventures away from home, and that will be maintained. But I will look as well if there are any other sources of funding that he and his constituents may be able to utilise in order to ensure that every child in Leicester has the opportunity to have the outdoor experiences and play opportunities that they deserve.
Mr. Speaker, can I very much welcome the Minister's statement today, and I think there's nobody in the Chamber who isn't encouraged by what the Honourable Lady has said. The Minister will know that there was great disappointment when youth services did not appear to be prioritised within the budget. Early intervention with children problems now will make adults who are trained and apprentices into work directed away from criminal influence and from gang membership, and given the confidence and the self-assurance to combat mental health issues as well. Minister, is the statement today an indication that youth investment is a priority and that community groups will not have to scramble from the funding table? And will there be help to help community groups access the process to gain that finance and help? Thank you so much.
Yeah, can I thank him for that question? He will know that the economic situation that we inherited as a government was a disaster, not just because of the way in which the economy had been mismanaged, but also because of the lack of investment in public services over a long period of time, and particularly the impact on local councils, which has then meant that so many local councils are focusing on statutory responsibilities, that youth in particular has been deeply affected. But in the budget, there were a number of announcements that we made, including the Creative Careers Skills Programme, which sits within my department. As there are areas of the economy that are fast growing in every nation and region, and we are determined that not only will those communities benefit from good jobs, but that young people in them will have the opportunity to get those jobs. I am sick and tired of going to parts of the country where jobs are being created, the kids can see them from their school playgrounds, but could no more dream of getting those opportunities than of going to the moon. And we are determined that under this government that is going to change.